All right, so let's talk more about habilitation services for service providers. And the way that I have this arranged is kind of like starting at the very beginning about what are habilitation services. Habilitation services are there basically for the building skills. They're related to skill development, even if skill development means that the person is maintaining a skill that they have recently perhaps mastered or that they're keeping current. Habilitation is an interesting word. Habilitation has an exact definition, and we have it displayed here on our screen. I won't read it out to us because you can see it. But it is essentially like all of our home and community-based services meant to give a person chances to learn skills so that they can become more independent, or keep skills so that they can reside in their home and community-based setting, whether it's a home or a service-related home, a residential service, or perhaps at work. Okay, so they teach the person to develop or maintain skills where that setting is in the place the service is provided. Okay, don't get confused. It uses the word setting. It's not about settings, but wherever the person is. For example, day habilitation is done in the community. So, where we're in the community and we're learning something. We're at home and we're being assisted to learn something. I'm at work and I'm being assisted to learn skills that make me more independent or keep independent skills, as the case may be. It's different than rehabilitation. Rehabilitation is about regaining skills that we previously had. So if I have rehab services, it's like I've lost or had my skills diminished because of an injury or illness. Our habilitation services are available to people who use our intellectual developmental disabilities waiver, our adults with physical developmental disabilities waiver, our children's waiver, children with complex medical conditions, and our upcoming ISW individualized services waiver. Okay, so the habilitation services assume that the person is going to be learning skills lifelong, and they are going to be there to help. The services are for the purpose of learning more independent skills or maintaining skills for everyday life, because the person experiences an intellectual or developmental disability. Or perhaps under our child's waiver, the person may not experience that just because of their age, then they're offered these services so that they may be closer to developmental markers of a same age peer. Okay, so they're helping the person to learn and develop skills. You will work directly with the person to learn what their goals are and to learn more about what steps the person will take to get there. As an agency provider, you will help identify what the staff will do to help that person work on their objectives. The goal is the overarching theme that the person has in mind, their person-centered goal, what they would like to achieve. Objectives are steps to get there. And the efforts of your direct support staff are the interventions. And so that kind of gives you a hint as to who does what. And we do have a separate PowerPoint about who does what. We'll look at that next. But when I show you that, a lot of times our teams are not exactly composed like that when it comes to developing objectives and interventions for the person. The person identifies their goal. They also choose the service provider. The service provider works together with their care coordinator and the person to develop objective steps that the person will be taking in order to get closer to that goal. And our provider develops the interventions because the provider will be governing, if you will, what the staff will do in order to assist that person. Okay, because the care coordinator now in the modern era is separated from the service provider, okay, but they're still the member of the team that is going to be putting that plan together. And the service provider is where the person actually begins to get the benefit of that service. When they come in, the staff will actually provide those supports. Okay. Habilitation services are done in a unit size. Hourly habilitation is a 15-minute unit. So if I get an hour of habilitation, there's 4 units in that hour. The plan should show how the habilitation service will support that person's work on their objectives for each 15-minute unit. They are offered an objective during that time. So habilitative services, habilitation services are not standby services. They're active habilitation, teaching and training, things like that. We do have questions coming in about maintenance goals. Maintenance is totally acceptable under habilitation services. The key with maintenance needs to show, you need to explain why the person is continuing and what that maintenance effort is going to do to help that person. The thought here is that maintenance goals can potentially run into the danger of just being the same year after year after year for the person, and it becomes not person-centered in that way. Okay, and so I realize that you probably have a lot of questions based on what I'm saying, but we're going to get there. Okay, a person's markers of achievement can be incremental, and really depending on how much the person, what progress means to them, there may actually be progress when we're thinking that it's maintenance. Okay. Group home and family hab are residential services that are habilitation services that are 24 hours. So it's a 24-hour unit. It just means that the person lives in the home. The staff provides assistance for that person to gain or maintain skills in everyday living that they do at home. Okay. Lots of questions about supported living or in-home supports coming in. We'll get back to it too. Supported living and in-home supports are services that occur at home. So supported living and in-home supports are not going to be happening in the community. A person could do things to care for themselves in the house or at home, and that is what that service is there to do. Okay, so we'll get there. They are also residential Hab services, but those are 15-minute services, okay? 15-minute unit, okay? In a 24-hour unit, because it is habilitation, so people are teaching, or people are having teaching and they are learning, but there is some assumed downtime during the day, such as the time the person is asleep. So a person is not expected to have a full 24-hour, it is a habilitation service, but it's expected that sometimes the person will sleep. So we refer you to the conditions of participation for the 24-hour service provision and what's required and things like that. And it does involve active teaching and training and learning, but there's going to be some time when the person is asleep. Okay. The skill building part of habilitation doesn't have to fulfill the entire 24-hour time. Okay, we get that people sleep. All right, lots of questions. Keep them coming. I won't be able to call out every single one of them. We'll go back to them. Okay. I'll make some notes here so that I can go back and and answer them better. Okay. Question says, if a person is doing laundry in a laundry facility, it can be done in that could supported living be done in the community that way? If they have to go, to a laundry facility and that's their part of that. My best answer for the questions about supported living being done in the community, if it's requested in a plan where there's really, it's about the person's independence to care for themselves at home. A care coordinator could request any service to, for this. Your guideline is that supported living is related to being at home. If a person must do laundry outside of the home, they could certainly request that under supported living, and it would have to get evaluated by our team in order to show that it fits their need and it's specific to their need for supported living and their goals and their gains that they're going to make. Okay? It would have to connect to the rest of their story as to gaining independence in the home. For example, if a person really they're it's their only option to have laundry done and they're participating in a bunch of their laundry related tasks, even if they're broken down into small increments, then those tasks are being done at the laundromat. The laundromat is accessible to the person. Staff is providing it to that person in that location. Documentation shows that. And it's shown that the environment, for example, accessible, if a laundromat's not accessible to the person, then it's not going to make sense that the skills are done in that particular setting. I guess I'm just trying to get to it has to specifically work for the person. Okay, so we'll get there. When you're working with a person to discover their goals, again, this happens through the planning process. I just wanted to kind of take it a step back and say that it is very important to listen and watch. If a person communicates nonverbally, watch. Listen for their wishes, desires, and needs. Listen for the ways that they could be supported. The people who are already their champion in their life and people who know them. And I realize many folks we serve don't have a lot of people who know them. Some people have a lot. Some people are adults and they've been in the system for a long time. They may have staff who know them well. They may have family. Everyone has family of some type. Listen for ways a waiver service could help. Everybody has a strength that they bring to their life. Everyone has choice that they bring to their life. It's up to us to discover their communication style. How do we know the person says yes, and how do we know the person says no? Even if a person is only awake for part of the day, even if the person has needs for extensive support, such as they use a wheelchair to get around, they're not awake a lot of the time of the day, they need staff to do everything for them. How does that person communicate? I never met a person who doesn't communicate. A person can indicate some type of choice. We just have to listen for it and watch for it and talk to people who know the person well. Waiver services can help a person achieve goals and dreams, but waiver services in and of themselves are not the goal and the dream. They're not. Waiver services help the person get closer. Many people will achieve their goals and dreams. Many people will spend a lifetime getting close to some of them. That's not very different than you and me. Not every person achieves every goal and every dream they would have for themselves in their life. People we serve through these services need help in order to get closer to what they want to do with life. It's not about getting the services, it's about getting a life. How is the service going to help me get a life? Some other background thoughts. Habilitation services are not for just doing the definition of the service. For example, Day Hab is not to get somebody out into the community. It's not. Day Hab is to help a person work on their goal in the community through the support of steps, meaning objectives, and the help of staff. Okay, it's not to get someone out into the community, because exclusion is not inclusion. What do I mean by that? Exclusion means special programs where people practice something outside of the community to prepare for the community. For example, I set up a practice bowling alley so people can practice bowling in a separate setting in order to maybe go bowling in the community. That's not inclusion. Exclusion is not inclusion. Exposure is not inclusion. Exposure would be, oh, I'm going to take the person for a ride in the community so that they can see people doing things. That's exposure. I get exposed to something. It's different than inclusion. I understand that exposure might need to be a first step in order to get, I have to know about something in order to be included in it. But knowing about it and being next to it isn't the same. It could be a piece of it, and I'm not saying, it's not a piece of it, but it shouldn't remain the gist of the service that's provided through a waiver forever. For example, riding in a van. Riding in a van throughout the community is exposure, not inclusion. If I'm riding in a van, where am I going? What do I do when I get there? How do I learn? What can I learn? Who can I see? Who can see me? Likewise, integration is not inclusion. Integration is, I'll show you the picture. Okay, it's kind of getting to where I can show the picture here. Full participation is inclusion. So what we're working with here and the philosophy of our home and community-based systems overall is to support people to have full inclusion, full participation at home, at work, and in my community. So here's the illustration. Exclusion, segregation, integration, and inclusion. So these types of thoughts have informed the system that brings you the habilitation services, because people with an intellectual and developmental disability are going to need help to learn how to navigate through these different environments to bring them the results they want from life. They're going to have to take it slow in some areas, just like you and me. They're going to have to be fast in some areas. They're going to be good at some things, just like you and me. This is what is behind habilitation services. This is why rates are built the way they are to support habilitation services, because they are going to be providing that level of support. So full participation usually happens in stages. By stages, I mean, where is the person in their life? Are they a child? Are they an adult? Who is around them? Where are the champions? As a habilitation service provider, are you sometimes people's champion? Who believes in that person and that they can make their gains and they can use their strengths? What challenges or challenges does the person face to full inclusion? Are the challenges really something that the person does, or is it something that their environment does or that society does? How can we help the person make reasonable changes within so that they gain skills? How can we help them encounter the world outside of themselves to get the results they want? How do we indicate their choice? What is best to start with now, according to their desires and strengths? And when I say now, I mean that now is today, now, the current time. This goes back into plans of care and amendments. Many times there are legacy goals and objectives that a person will retain throughout their life, which just comes from planning teams not thinking about being their champion, not thinking about where they are. And just for lack of energy, I guess, around the concept, choosing to keep goals the same year after year because the person is observed to be not able to do something. For example, I can't tie my shoes yet and I'm 53 years old. Well, they have Velcro shoes now. Really what I want is to have a friend. That type of thinking is what I'm getting at here with the possibilities of a habilitation service. So where's the person at now? And I'm offering Maslow's hierarchy of needs. How many of us have seen Maslow's hierarchy of needs before? Just by show of hands. Raise your hand if you've seen Maslow before. If you haven't, that's okay. Oh, cool. A lot of us have. All right, awesome. Over half of us have seen Maslow. So Maslow's hierarchy of needs just tries to show how it's likely that a person will have these different needs throughout the stages of life. And as a person, ourselves and the people we serve move higher on this pyramid up towards the top, which is dependent on all these lower plateaus, if you will. We move towards self-actualization. And so habilitation services are there to help a person move up, down, and all around this pyramid. Okay? People may be simultaneously working on goals that are in any of these areas. A person may have an overarching goal that they can work on using the habilitation services you provide, and they may work on that same goal through a couple services. For example, if I want to have a friend, I may work on that partially at home by, getting on Facebook and starting to meet people that are on Facebook. I may work on that partially in dehabilitation with friendship encounters, going places where people are who have the same interests as me. Getting help to approach somebody who is at a meeting about comics or something that I enjoy, something we have in common. It's the same goal, but we work on it through different services because a person doesn't really have a compartmentalized life. A person shouldn't hear, well, you're only going to work on social goals when you have day hab. I'm just here to give you, 3 hots and a cot here at the house. That's all I do. That's not what that is. It's not a full life. A full life is complicated in a good way. So that is where our teams need to reflect that level of working together on the person's behalf. And we have to work on where the person is now, not where we got, they were 5 years ago and they're still not there because they're not tying their shoes. We need to decide on what's important now so the person can move about this pyramid in a meaningful way. Self-actualization, if you look at the one on the top, we could talk about this forever, but I won't put you through that. You have this. You can think about it. You can discuss it within your groups. Okay. Morality, creativity, spontaneity, problem solving, lack of prejudice, and acceptance of facts. I think a lot of the people we serve already have a lot of these attributes. Yet people will need many supports for some of these attributes. I would probably add to that top pyramid piece, one of the things that's very difficult or challenging for people we serve and for many people who are not getting services. One of the big things that helps people be independent is to begin to recognize cues in their immediate environment in order to tell what to do next. So along the trajectory of receiving hand over hand support for something to start, all the way towards being an independent, along the way is getting cues from your immediate environment. For example, what a bus stop looks like, and that a bus will be there, and that is where I will be. What a chair looks like, and that if I sit in a particular chair in an auditorium, I will be watching something that will happen, and I'm going to be interested in that. And I'm going to work on paying attention to that so I can enjoy it. All those things are things that that we, learn through our environment and through school and through our socialization and our acculturation that occurs in our early years. And think about the word acculturation. We're helping people catch up in those areas, if you will, and also to work to the best of their potential. So because of that, our habilitation services and our providers will have these attributes. The habilitation services help the person to do things and learn things. They fit the needs of the person, not the needs of others. A lot of times habilitation services are thought of as having to do something because somebody else needs it. We get that people have resources. Everybody has resources available to them and not available to them. What will the habilitation service help the person do? Not fit the need of somebody else. Hab services are much, 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 much more than shopping and weight loss. Shopping and weight loss are big examples, even known to, throughout the years. Shopping is great. Shopping is a skill. You can have a lot of social interaction through shopping and things like that. But I would challenge people to move past shopping in some cases and get into what it is that the person really wants to learn. Okay, they can learn that in different settings too. Weight loss, again, person-centered. Everybody wants to lose weight. Not everybody, but making a generalization. Some people, we see a lot of plans about losing weight. Maybe it's more about, I want to feel good about myself. I want to feel better. I want to feel healthy. Maybe it's something like that. Maybe it's part of that. I'm not saying you can't do those things, but there's a lot of that out there, a lot of that thought process out there. So I guess I just challenge us to think about what that means. Service planning takes into consideration all the help available to the person, including services that aren't like paid waiver services, anything else in the world that around them in their community that helps that person. Anything. It could be informal groups, something we hear about in the community. Hey, I heard there's a group that meets at the pizza place and they play banjos and fiddles. You don't really have to know how to play, you just have to love it. That type of thing. Things that the community offers that's special, unique about that community. So about the provider, the habilitation service provider is of course certified and enrolled. I'm not going to get into that process here because as a provider, and if you're a provider, you're here because you're a provider. You're certified and enrolled. You're following the regs. You've got all the resources at hand. You've been approved, that type of thing. More than that, you are providing habilitation services because you believe in a person's abilities. You believe in their abilities without judgment. And by without judgment, I mean without saying, but they can't really. You believe in their abilities. You are not judging how small the abilities appear to be to a person without disabilities eyes, without judgment. A habilitation service provider is able to listen, observe, and adapt their teaching. Direct service staff are trained to listen, observe, and adapt. Habilitation service providers believe in full inclusion on behalf of those they serve. All of our service efforts help the person get closer to that without judgment. No matter how small the steps are, no matter how many times it takes to try, we are working with people who will learn lifelong, just like you and me. No matter how many different strategies are tried, no matter how long it takes to see progress. We need to see progress. Okay, so the last one there is not meant to say, well, we just have plans and services without progress forever because the person's disabled. That's not what it means. It means that people might need a few years to look back and say, wow, it's 2 years later and the person doesn't jump out from behind the wall and pull on people's hair anymore. Why is that? Well, that's because they're engaged with life. And their jar, so to speak, is being filled up with other things, and things are more enriching to them. And they don't feel the need to pop out from behind walls and pull on people's hair. They're getting their needs met in a way that really works for them. Sometimes you don't see it until 2 years away. Okay. That is what I'm trying to get at there. Okay. So at this point, I'm going to be quiet for a second. Offer for me if you have any reflections at this point about opening the door to thoughts about habilitation services. I keep trying to say habilitative. Habilitative doesn't really exist in the dictionary, but habilitation does. So I'm trying to go with that. What are your thoughts at this point? And keep thinking. We'll go for a couple more minutes and then we'll take a break. Okay, because it's coming up to the top of the hour. And we'll go a little bit after, maybe 10 minutes after at the most, and then we'll take a break for you. Okay? And you can write me anything you want. You write your thoughts, your reflections, your concerns, your comments. We'll get back to your questions. Okay. What if someone doesn't know what goals and objectives are? Do we give ideas? Okay. Thank you, everybody. I don't know if everybody knows me here. Many of you have been in my trainings before. If you have not been in my trainings before, I try to give a person-centered angle to everything I do, not only because it is now a federal requirement for person-centered plannings and outcomes for people, but also because I have family members who are in the waiver system. People are writing, I've known you many years. Yes, I'm lucky to know many of you many years, and that's awesome. And to those of you who are new to me, welcome. You're the voice of families. Oftentimes I will say a family might think this and a family might think that. And sometimes because people don't know me, they'll say, well, how do you know? I do have family members in this system. I do have two young adult teen boys, if you will, 17 and 19, who both experience autism. And that would be to the level of nonverbal autism. And I do have an adult brother who is 3 years younger than me who experiences intellectual developmental disability. So it's also family perspective that you will get. And I realize that my window is also very small, even with that. Um, and I've also worked at a service provider helping families and individuals with intellectual developmental disability. And I worked with a service provider for 14 years, starting as a volunteer and doing many years of direct service, and then case management and other kinds of management. And so I was very enriched by that and thankful for that. And I've been here with the state since 2008. Okay, so let's look at a couple of the questions, and we'll get back to the beginning ones again as well. All right. So, for me, you're going to get a family perspective, and that I welcome your perspectives. I know that some of this type of learning can be a little on the emotional side, and we might feel like we're judging and things like that. These are okay. It's okay to write your concerns. We do have regulatory requirements. We'll be more than happy to remind you of them. And I appreciate my SDS staff who is also helping me with that too. Okay. What if somebody doesn't know what goals and objectives are? Do we give ideas? I think what you're thinking is the person you're talking with, your focus person, if you will, your individual. They don't know what that is. I think that if you break it down into plain language and say, a goal is just something that you want to see happen for yourself. What do you want to have happen? And an objective is it's like a river rock if you're going to cross the river. It's one step you're going to take in order to get across that river. What's one thing you can do? Um, you know, you can think of a person. I'm sure we can think of somebody we serve. For example, somebody who wants to have a friend. Let's just say somebody wants to have a friend or a girlfriend or a boyfriend, but yet there's something that they need to change about their behavior or learn to do in order to get closer to that. If we're working with a young person, they may want to establish friendship with their young play group or peer group, but they're they need help in order to be able to have play skills with others. We can suggest anything. We can get ideas from the team. You can talk to the person about what they are. You can also talk to their champions. That would be their parents, their guardians, their team, their people, their teachers, their staff, somebody who knows them, their champions. Everyone will have somebody who really is a champion for that person. A disability does not define the person. Absolutely. Um, Okay, what about people who can't speak for themselves? Parents know children and so on. Sometimes when they come up with the goals, it seems that it's more parent oriented than for the individual, but the person can't speak for themselves. If the parent decides on the goals and objectives, wouldn't it be biased? Um, yes and no. I mean, there's a lot of times that we need to speak with our parents and guardians about what person-centered means. Um, I am a parent, I am a guardian, and I do work with people who don't speak, and I have worked with people who don't speak. It really takes a lot of explanation, honesty, and to reach out to that person with all the love in your heart and say, look, these services are there to help that person get a life. It doesn't have to be about control. It doesn't have to be about deficit. It can be building upon skills in order to make a gain that they would want for their life. Sometimes people are scared when it comes to having more independence in the world. He'll run into the street and get hit by a car, that type of thought. I'll be terrified if they had a boyfriend or a girlfriend. They can't do these things, this type of thing. People can do a lot more things with assistance. So what we do when we confront those kinds of thought patterns, these are perfectly natural for people and families and loved ones and folks who are extremely responsible for caring for our special needs child. I mean, I don't really have a day in my life past age 3 where there wasn't that environment going on, so I can identify with that. You know, there's a lot of responsibility and, you confront the outside world and the inside world of your family life, and you realize that you have 2 selves. One of them is the one that you're at home with the person, and the other one is the one that you are in the world because the rules are different out there. So we can reconcile those things in people's minds by talking about, well, what supports are needed for that person to be able to cross the street safely? How many times did they really have to cross the street? Are we really talking about crossing the street? Or are we just talking about getting out and doing more things? Can we get there in a car? Can we get there on a bus? What's the first step? And then we're talking about task analysis, which is really boring words to describe where does where do we start with now? What do we start with today with that person or that young person in order to have them, maybe it's about being calm in a room full of people and teaching that person in context, having that person have the ability to try this out where they're actually going to learn it. Having the person become responsive to a verbal cue or prompt, those types of things. We really just talk about the supports that's needed. We can talk about all day long to a parent or a guardian about, well, what help is needed to achieve that? Sometimes we hear things from our families which we don't understand as a provider group. You know, a family may make a statement where the person can't do anything, but yet we're there because we believe they can. Well, we can say, well, what's one thing that should change in order for the person to get closer to that? I'm not saying they're going to walk out the door and get married. I'm saying that they want to, the person wants to have a chance to be with peers and learn a social skill. What's one step? So your question about biased goals and objectives, um, yes, but you need to develop a way to dialogue with people to mitigate that and to identify that and to give people more information about that, to give people safety plans about that so that they can understand what you're saying. Because as a family, we live 2 lives. One of them's at home, the other one's in the community. Help us put it together so that we can see that. Ultimately, just like everybody else under the sun with kids, parents like me and every other parent has to give their person to the world. They have to give their loved one to the world. It's no different for a parent who, has kids that don't experience disability. It's just a little bit more help is needed, and in some cases, a lot more help is needed for that person to become a member of the world, meaning the community. Okay, so we'll talk for about 5 more minutes about developing goals and objectives for habilitation services. And hopefully you'll have more questions about, how to develop these things and what personal goals are, and we'll give you some ideas. Okay, so I'll do my best not to read this out directly to you. You do have a copy that you can download, and I will be more than happy to email you a copy. But a personal goal is a person's goal. All the plans that the support plans require a goal. The person will have a personal goal. Our habilitation services will help the person work on their goal. If they may have a personal goal that services may not be able to support. For example, people might say, I want to own a purple unicorn someday. Okay, great. That might be a personal goal of that individual. Maybe it's a child who's like, I really want a purple unicorn. Okay, great. You'll have to help them establish a goal that a service can help with. So you can delve into that and interview that person more about the purple unicorn and see about, is there something there that a service could actually help with? And a lot of this work is done through a care coordinator, but there's nothing saying that a service provider can't converse with people about those things too. I have a separate presentation that we'll get to that is about who does what. So for habilitation services, goals and objectives, there really is not a prescribed set number or limit on them. There is no formula. The format is provided by the plan of care, the service plan. There's not a formula for how many related to the hours of service. People ask me a lot of that about that. The plan has to articulate how the objectives will support that person. That is where you come in, those steps that they're going to take. So if I'm going to be working on this big goal and I have a habilitation service helping me, it needs to be clear the objectives, the steps I'm going to take, and what the staff is going to do to help. When we really be specific about that and feel interested and compelled in that person and their story and becoming their champion, it really gets less and less difficult to articulate that on paper or digital paper. It gets less and less difficult to document that in the, the Hab note when you are specific about what you're going to do and stop worrying about numbers and things like that. When you become truly person-centered and really depict that full story, these things will come alive in the plan. So the person will work with their care coordinator and their team. They develop a goal statement and measurable objectives. We'll tell you what that looks like. These are examples. Okay, so I do not want to have people submit these on actual plans because we're going to see that. We're going to know. Okay, sometimes it happens. But I'm hoping that you are inspired by these to have these conversations with the people you serve. The goal comes to the person and their team too. Goals and objectives are person-centered. It needs to come from that person's, it needs to develop and redevelop over time. The goals, objectives, and interventions in the plan portray how they have met markers of independence. The plan itself will give an accurate description of their abilities and strengths. It shows how the person makes choices. What can they do for themselves? Okay, if a person is able to use eye gaze to make a choice and that's what we know, then that's what it is. So be it. We look at that without judgment. A person has a need for pervasive supports. Okay, I'm talking about a person who needs a lot of technology for daily living. They can move one body part reliably, and that indicates choice. We say that's how they do their choice. We don't judge that. It's how they make their choice. A person doesn't ever do nothing. Everybody does something. It's on us to discover it. You will need to be able to train your staff to provide the skill-based supports and make that expectation clear. Celebrate that for your staff and let them know that they are the ones that are there where the person meets everyday life and the incredible, infinite teaching that can come from everyday environments. So this is how you can organize your thoughts. Once you know that person and you have a meeting with them and their care coordinator, you can think about, or you can ask their champion, if you don't know them, describe the supports they need to accomplish activities in an average day. Maybe a care coordinator will come to you with this information. What help do they need at school, work, doing activities? What others do to help them? What about if they have a sick day? What does help look like then? What about an off day? How does the service help the person get closer to leading a life of their choice? Okay, a couple questions here. When working on goals and objectives, can data recorded be repetitive on a day-to-day basis? What can you do if there's some form of repetition? Um, you know, data may be repetitive. You may have average responses to your objectives, but you want to be more descriptive in your recording because cutting and pasting notes is not going to work. It's going to create uh, problems, potential problems at audit, because it's hard to tell if the service was actually done, if it's the same thing over and over, literally. Also, patterns of cookie cutter in noting. My best thought there is that staff can learn how to document responses to services in a specific way and that avoid constant repetition in notes, because really, as the eagle flies, every day is the same, right? But as the worm or the ant crawls, it's really not. They're closer to reality. They're closer to where the rubber meets the road, where the actual service happens, where, all that teaching happens. I don't mean to use, one up, one down animal examples at all. They're equal in my mind, but it really is that's where the importance of it happens there. So being specific about what was done to help the person is important, and being specific also to somehow think about involving the person in their own documentation. It's possible to help the person be involved. Today we did this together. Does this look right to you? Today, this is the story of what we did together today. We did this, that, and the other thing. I helped you with this. This is how you responded to that, or this is what you told me through that. Even if the person doesn't talk, okay? Um, Involve the person, involve the staff more. Um, Okay, the question says, is not mandatory for providers to come up with goals or objectives for the person. The person comes up with the goals. The provider and the care coordinator and the team will come up with objectives. The provider will come up with interventions. You have to work together as a team. It's mandatory to work together as a team to make it happen. If you don't work together as a team to make the objectives happen, then that's against the conditions of participation. It doesn't let anybody off the hook. Question says, can IEP goals be used for Hab services? Will that be considered duplication or continuation? A Hab service can support an IEP goal, but it must be its own thing because they're different. IEP goals are different. They're for that system. Habilitative services are long-term services and supports. They're not the same, but they can support the same intended outcome. Okay, thank you. Yeah, chances are that day to day is not the same. So I've been through audit, okay? I've been through this type of audit where staff were tempted to, cut and paste the same verbiage every day, or maybe make a template of 4 or 5 different days and switch them out. Don't do it, because number one, anyone can see that. Audit people see that. Number two, well, maybe that's not number one. Number one is that this is not the story of the person's day. This is not authentic engagement with that person and teaching and training them, because it's different each day. Okay, so there's that. Number two is audit. Number three, when we allow that or encourage that, we have to look at what makes that happen. What forms the basis that thought process can grow in, and change it. Change it so that we are training our staff to document reality, and so that we're not promulgating and promoting the idea that every day is the same. Because when we promote the idea that every day is the same for people because I experience a disability, what happens? Staff start to feel like they're not important. What I do doesn't matter. All I do is be here with Kara does the same thing every day. Oh, this is, nothing changes. I don't know why we do this. None of these things are true. It needs to be flipped so that the inspiration of learning is what's depicted, and offering, even if it's difficult, offering those choices and documenting what's actually happening. Okay, so at this point, I'm going to let us take a break. All right. So it's like, I guess it's about when we started an hour ago or thereabouts. So I would like to give us a 10-minute break at this time, and I'll be quiet and we'll come back to the rest of the session and continue to write your questions and thoughts, and we'll be back in 10 minutes. It's 2:17, 2:27. I'll be back here. Okay. Thanks, everybody. Okay, it's Kara, and I am back and just sharing a few fun slideshow images here. We'll carry on, and I've got the rest of this document and then a couple other fun presentations for you that I hope are helpful. We'll go back to our initial questions, um, and shoot me questions, comments, thoughts, things like that. Um, and we'll get them answered. Okay. Even if I don't read out your question, I got it. It's online here, meaning I can print what they call a report out of the GoToWebinar, and I could even respond to you individually at a later time. So don't feel that where you're not heard if you write something in and I don't say it or write back. Okay. It's a really big class, and it's really hard for me to write back to every single person, but all of your thoughts count. And the way to get in is to write it in. And Delight and Cassandra are doing a great job of writing in some responses to your questions in the background too. Okay, so you might get a little message from them as well. Okay, so let's go even deeper into the mud, so to speak. So we were talking about habilitation services, and we had some thoughts and some frame ups here about how to work with the team. And as a reminder, a few folks have reminded me that it is in the conditions of participation that we work on the teams to develop goals and objectives. The hot potato effect of who does what is really not helpful to the person. It's not helpful to the plan or the service provider. It's really hard to negotiate that through, because a lot of us kind of get down the track of like, I only want to do what I essentially just have to do, but essentially you have to work with the team, and it's better off, and you're better off, in your growth to do that and to get those skills from teamwork and sharing that info too. Yes, we are all here for the people we serve. It is our common denominator, and isn't that a great thing? State staff are here for them too. I say them, us, people we serve. We're all here for the same reasons, because we care. We believe in the people we serve. We believe in people's ability to make gains and things like that. Okay, so when I have the statements here about assessing risk, what I'm talking about is just a conversation and a thought, some questions that you can ask within the teams. If the person wants to learn to do something more independently, you may start with assessing basic risks around that. And I just put a super plain example here, but my thoughts previously about working with parents and guardians and assuring people's safety and taking steps towards the independence is the way to go. And that is what I mean when I say assessing risks. Okay, so if a person wants to bathe or shower independently, what are the inherent risks? So think about where they're going to be learning a skill. In this case, it's just a simple example: the bathroom, tub shower. Okay. Does the person feel water temperature? Think about that. Can they tell if it's too hot or too cold? Do they need somebody else to monitor that? What help do they need to tell that, if so? Can they physically maneuver into or out of a tub or shower? Do they need help with that? Do they have health conditions that people need to support or know about? Perhaps they're relatively independent, but they do have a seizure disorder. What is the plan for safety? Is there a plan? What will staff do to help, and what will they do to teach? It doesn't mean to say, well, you can't do this because you have a disability, because we believe you can't think this through. It's what it is that you can work towards this goal. Where do we need to start? What kind of dangers are there or risks are there for you that we can put something together to help with? What is it that you really want? Okay, here are some thoughts too in a little story. The person will often need to start at the beginning. Remember Maslow's pyramid. You start at the beginning and work towards their goal. You can make gains in the zone or the theme of that goal. You need to talk with that care coordinator and the person and their legal rep about what is most meaningful. When you can answer questions about what's meaningful, then the care coordinator can articulate that in the plan, and you as the provider can make intervention statements like what will the staff do to help. You can also inform the objectives. What are the steps? Okay, what is it that we're actually going to start with? What are the steps we're going to take? The story here in the purple letters is just about habilitation services that were provided to a young man who wanted to be a police officer, but he was obsessed with that. Everybody knew that there was no way he was actually going to be a police officer, but he's stated up and down for years that that's what he wanted to do. But nobody in his planning team was going to tell him that you can't do that because that was his dream. So when they got closer to actually finding out what was important to this young man, what it really was all about was that he wanted a job, number one. Number two, he wanted a job where he could wear a uniform. It was all about the uniform. It didn't really matter what kind of uniform. He just wanted it to have his name on it, and there were so many different jobs that he could have where he could wear a uniform, and a basic uniform of coveralls with a name on the front was what he ended up with. And he could actually wear that to pretty much any job that he ended up trying throughout his trials with jobs. And that was what was important to him. But if we sat down and said, you can't do that because you can't be a police officer because that's too complicated for you, that would not be person-centered. And it also doesn't give us any opportunity to come up with this kind of like really rich, you know, book full of possibilities that we could do to help this person. Each one of them full of potential for gains. So goals for Hab Services is the end result they want to achieve. The goal it's measurable in the sense that the person will achieve it someday. It needs to be meaningful to the person, and the person will make progress. They will either make progress toward independence, and in some cases, they will maintain a current level of independence if that is where they are at in their plan and they are wanting to pursue um, keeping a skill current for a period of time. Of course, plans can have more than one goal. It needs to stay relevant to that person. So here are some goal statements, example statements. John wants to live in his own apartment. These are just for training. Again, this is not the be all and end all. Kathy wants to learn how to cook. Peter wants to keep his collections orderly and neat. Jamal wants to meet at least one friend who's interested in video games. Lana wants to work in a retail store. Helen wants to establish and develop her micro business. Joe wants to take his girlfriend out on a date. Gina wants to host a barbecue party at her house. If you want to think about that last one for a child, maybe it's birthday party or something like that. Collections could be toys. It doesn't have to be just adults. Maybe young people do want to live in their own apartment someday. Okay. An objective being the individual step that is taken to move towards a goal. You can break down the goal into steps that are as small as you need. Objectives do show the measurability of progress. So in that sense, objectives are measurable. So the sentences have a structure. Objectives have a structure. They describe an action and an object that receives it. They also convey frequency and duration. Verbs describe things that are observable. If we use words like learn, think about, consider, and regulate, those are not observable. We use action verbs that are observable. So I know it says above, John wants to live in his own house someday. We'll say apartment, okay? The measurable goal, and we do have a shopping example here. So here we are in shopping land, but that's okay. Sometimes it happens. John needs to review food in the pantry twice a week. He prepares a grocery list once a week, and he goes shopping for necessary groceries once a week. So you can see the action verbs that are in green. The subject, of course, is John in red. The receiver would be grocery list and groceries, and I forgot to highlight food in that one. And the purple letters are the duration. We are not having percentages here. Some of us have asked, do we have to have percentages? You can have objectives that have a narrative way of explaining how they're completed. If we have percentages, then we also need to provide some type of narrative to tell how this person has progressed. Okay? Needs to be measurable. Okay? In this example, we would have met with John and his team, his champions, and everybody to figure out what kinds of activities he's motivated for. Okay, he's motivated to move forward towards his goal by shopping for groceries. That was just his one example. Could be a different one. Could even be laundry or something. Could be anything. I'm just using kind of home related ones. Okay. So what does measurable mean? Measurable means you are going to do something to measure it. You need to ask yourself, what would I or others do or see if the person has accomplished the goal through the objective? Here's some characteristics of a measurable objective. I'll make it a little bit larger here. Okay, a measurable objective reveals what to do to measure whether the goal or objective has been accomplished, tells you what to do. How do you measure it? What is done? Yields the same conclusion if measured by several people. You know, like other people could look at it and go, yeah, I understand that. Okay. It allows a calculation of how much progress it represents, which doesn't have to be what they call quantitative, but it can be, and can be measured without additional information. Okay, so it doesn't have any mystery parts to it. Okay, and that is an example from an IEP document, IEP book, if you will. Criterion can be part of these too. Criterion just shows the type of performance. It's quantitative. It's part of the quantitative data. It shows type of performance to be determined successful within the goal. How much or how little of an action is a dividing line for progress or maintenance. For completing something, for example, completing something in 3 out of 5 trials, once a day, once a week, in 2 hours, taking less than 2 hours a week, etc. So it could be, it just says completing something, but a person could try something or could have an opportunity to work their objective and complete it or partially complete it in 3 out of 5 trials. These are just examples trying to show you measurability. Quantitative data is not required. It needs to be measurable through the narrative. Oops. Clicking around here. Percentage is acceptable. It needs to be applied to observable objectives. Should say objectives here. Okay. Kara completes sorting her bedding laundry into lights, darks with 80% accuracy. It might be possible to do it If we know about how much laundry is sorted, if a percentage statement says Kara indicates her preference for music using eye gaze 60% of the time, it really isn't able to be measured because it's my subjective choice. We can't really put a percentage on that. We might propose an objective based on being offered a criteria. Okay, so you might choose Kara indicates her preference for music once a day, using eye gaze once a day, in 3 out of 5 trials, in 2 consecutive hours, so that we have an ending, okay? And I know I'm using the word goals here, but it should say objective there, okay? Okay, non-measurable objective. Chandra will learn to act appropriately in public. It's not possible to know what acting appropriately looks like. How would somebody who doesn't know her know that? It's not possible to tell how or when she learned it. It's likely that some people would disagree on whether it was achieved, and it's really not specific. For example, being able to, kick someone and run away is a skill if I'm being attacked, but kicking people and running away in regular situations, whatever that is probably not going to work. So being specific and acting and talking about the behavior that the person does want as opposed to what you don't want, then you could say, while waiting in line at the grocery store, Chandra makes no verbal comments to other customers and stays in the line in 2 out of 3 trials. And that kind of tells you a little bit more about what it really is for her instead of just acting appropriately. Okay, you can measure if Chandra completes or makes progress. Others could understand and likely agree. Direct support staff could do that. They could help. They could actually do something to help that happen. Staff could follow their interventions for her so she can learn. Okay, measurable means that the person and their champions will be able to see progress and understand progress or maintenance of skills, usually through documentation done by the staff. The care coordinator can report on it, including their progress, their maintenance, their relevance of the objectives through that documentation, and that will go into the renewal plan. The example, what about Kara indicates her preference for music using her eye gaze with 3 prompts or less with a 60% success rate? I guess that's okay. I don't know how to prompt somebody to use their eye gaze. I mean, it sounds like something that someone would just do. We've sort of discovered that. I think you could do that. You could say, look here, or something like that. Why would there be an issue with her making verbal comments as long as they are not inappropriate? See there, now you're thinking. I get it. Maybe that person's verbal comments to others in line was just really getting in the way of them being independent. That would have to have been identified through, the planning team. Okay? The planning team would come up with that. And the statement says, I'm wondering what about goals that seem unfair to an individual's preferences, such as being social? Great thought. We don't want to have goals and objectives become a funnel that the person loses their personality through. No, we're there to support the person be the best one they can be. If the person says, gee, I really want to go shopping and get done, and I get stuck in the store for hours and hours because, I lose my place in line because I run over and talk to people, and, I really need to be able to do like what I see other people do. I want to get through that line. That might be something like that. But I like that you're thinking that way. Goals that seem unfair to an individual's preferences, such as being social. And there's a time and a place in our generic population, for such a thing. It doesn't mean that people can't be quirky. It doesn't mean that people can't be different. As a culture and a society, we're always moving towards acceptance of these things. But it doesn't mean that a person, should go to a movie theater and be so loud that other folks don't enjoy the movie and they become disruptive. That is not, going to do anything good for the person or for others in the community. It's going to get them rejected by moviegoers in general. So a lot of times people have to learn how to put a lid on it. That's okay too. Mostly it's just about getting needs met and being ready to encounter a situation, being challenged with the right kind of situation at the right time. I don't think that the Chandra that we have here would be like a 5-year-old, okay? Because we don't expect that of, you know, generally there's kids talking to people and running around, with or without a disability. Do you see what I'm saying? It's very social. Social learning is very complex. So that is why when you open that book, that you will have, at the very least, plenty to write and think about when it comes to how to support a person to be social. How do we support a person to be social? Once I helped a gentleman who, his special thing was this tells you how old I am, but his special thing was pro wrestling, and they don't even have that anymore, right? It's not, pro wrestling anymore. It's like worldwide something, right? But that was his thing. That's all he ever talked about, a young gentleman. He wanted to have a girlfriend. And so whenever he would meet a girl, he would say, "You look like, a wrestler. You look like, I can't think of a real famous female wrestler from back in the day off the top of my head, but there was one that was popular. And so that was his way of giving her a compliment. Well, most of the time, young ladies don't really know a lot about wrestling, and they kind of thought that that was not, oh, China, thank you. You look like China. And so that was his way of complimenting her. And she would, there were many she's that he would approach, women, young women. And they would just be like, "No way, I don't even know what that is, and that's gross." And so he was constantly not able to meet anybody. So what we actually had to do was sit down and say, "Hey, it's great that you really like wrestling, but you know what we need to do? We need to teach you, which you should learn, how to listen to other people, because you like to talk, right? And you like girls, right? How about if we start listening to what the girl says, and then you say something that is about what she likes? And you like wrestling, girls like something else usually. If you can find one that loves wrestling just as much as you, then bless your heart, you win. Other than that, let's get you some chances here." So he learned how to do that, and he actually learned how to be quiet and listen. We had to teach him reciprocal listening skills, or communication skills. So he had to listen and think, and he actually had to talk himself through it. And sometimes he would say things that made people uncomfortable, like he would say, "I need to wait," or "I can't say anything for 1 minute." He would just say it and tell himself that. And people would be like, "What are you teaching this person?" It's really scary, because he says, "I can't talk." That's against his right to be social. And we just had to explain, no, he's just processing what he's going to use to be more social, by like kind of putting a lid on it in this real specific way. And he did learn it. And nothing turned out bad. He learned how to listen to other people with other interests. And that became kind of like, mutual benefit for him and his friends. Okay, so hopefully that helps paint the picture a little bit more, but it's a very creative work. It's very fun and creative and compelling when you really delve into what can we do. Yeah, people who don't work in the field don't understand this type of work. People in people in the world don't understand the people we serve, and they don't understand you as the person who's doing the work. And, it blows us away, and we think about it, and, you and I live and breathe this every day for a long time, but other people really don't. I mean, I believe personally that everybody has disability in their life somewhere. Okay. I get that. That's my thing. But generically, people don't understand. You're going to have to explain things like that. You're going to have to think about that. You're going to have to talk to families about that. You're going to have to know that, you're putting forth a good faith effort with all of your education to help this person have more power in their life. Okay, measurable just means you can see progress, and you can have it with a given. Given a visual recipe and measuring cup set, Joe measures dry ingredients correctly in 2 out of 3 trials. There's an easy one for you. You can write a measurable objective without the given. For example, people commonly will use a phone to make a phone call. When it says call, you don't have to say given a phone. Josephine calls her mother once a week and talks with her for at least 30 minutes. Okay, when you have progress, when you have data, you must have a narrative to accompany it, not just, for example, TheraP data sheets that you provide to a care coordinator. You need to have some kind of a conversation and a shifting of information from, the what you do as the service provider to the care coordinator in a harmonious way to inform the renewal plan. It's the plan of care day, meeting day to get to that plan is a day of celebration. It has been another year, and you have served that person, and you have gone forth and put together, you've done this work and you have results, and it's specific to that person. Okay. It shouldn't be like a burden to share that. It should be like this is what you're here to do, because it is. A lot of times people ask me about habilitation services to help decrease behavior. He does this too much. He does that too much. You can write a goal or an objective, to help the person decrease behavior. Clearly, my word search has not worked. I mean objectives here. Before you do that, you would meet with that person and the team. You would have these questions at hand so you can talk about what this behavior means to the person. Some of us work in agencies that have behavior support professional people, ABA people, applied behavior analysis staff. Okay, none of this replaces any of that. This is just to give a generic list here. This is not a methodology. I just want you to think about person-centered planning and positive behavior supports using this extremely simple intro. Reach out to your professionals for this, is what I'm trying to say. Are there clear and imminent health and safety risks because of their behavior? Because if there aren't, maybe it's not something you need to worry about right now. What's going on with their health? I would rule that out first. Are they having, are they ill? Do they have a broken bone? Are they going through puberty? Do they have a headache? Do they have migraine headaches? Do they have a toothache? What is going on with that person first? Then, is there any clear and imminent health and safety risk? Have they had any trauma in their past that might mean that they're doing this now, right? Maybe a person, you know, inhales their food and it's a choking risk. Anytime a person comes around them, they gulp their food really fast. Well, maybe a lot of times people that I've worked with who were raised in the previous years, in their early years, a long time ago is what I'm trying to say, they were in an institution. And when it came time for meals, people inhaled their meals or else they lose them. Maybe the person has lost the ability to really swallow fast, and something's going on with that. We need to help. Has the behavior happened before, and what was done to help before? What worked and what didn't work? What does the behavior that needs to decrease mean to that person? What does the behavior that needs to go away or decrease mean to the people or person who spends the most time with them? Right? If a person is constantly crying out or shouting, what does that mean to caregivers or people who spend a lot of time with them? Or maybe it's not really that big of a deal. Maybe it's like the person who spends a lot of time with them is distracted with something else. I can't play my video games because she's always doing something. Well, what do they, what do they need? Maybe the person's on their phone all the time. I can't look at my phone because, what does it mean? Does the behavior need to decrease because of the needs of the person or the needs of others? The needs of others is not really a reason to propose a habilitation service or objective. It's only for the person. Habilitation is for the person. What happens from their point of view when they do it? Do they get to leave a situation? Do they get something they like? Or do they get to get away from something they don't like? What's another way that the person can get what they need without using that behavior? That is where you can have a tremendous amount of skill building thoughts come in. What's another way they can get it? What's the best way that they can get that without using that behavior? What can the team do to help them get that without using the behavior? Does the person and the team think that reducing it now is important to their health, safety, and quality of life? If so, how will that team make sure that they have no restrictions placed on them during that help? How will the team reduce risks to health and safety during the help? How will the team measure the reduction? How will they measure increase in a functional behavior, meaning like the other thing they can do to get the same result? How will the team discontinue help when they don't need it anymore? When you can answer all of the questions, then there are objectives that you could decrease. You could propose objectives to decrease the non-functional behavior. Okay. Document all of this in order to put those together. Okay. So an example objective would be Kara shouts less than 5 minutes per week. That would be something that could be an objective, or a sub goal maybe about decreasing a behavior. What are your thoughts about objectives and reducing behaviors and objectionable behaviors and problems and challenge behaviors and things like that? What are your thoughts about that and plans and coming up with statements and instructing staff about those things? I see a lot of those ideas in training, and I'm trying to convey that all behavior is communication. And because of that, it's a wealth of information for you to provide supports. Okay. Question says, we don't know how to measure weekly progress across a week or different providers. I like your 2 out of 3 trials. Do you have another suggestion like that? Weekly progress across a week of different providers. I don't know. My best answer right now is like if it's difficult to put that all together, then you might want to just measure your progress in a bigger bite instead of weekly, like maybe quarterly. That's my best answer right now off the top of my head. So this info is how objective is measured or recorded. How are you documenting that? And then what markers will they achieve to show progress, and what time frame will they be reviewed? For example, a quarterly meeting. And so interventions themselves are what the staff will do to help. What's best to help that person with building that skill or maintaining that skill? What methods will you use? Here's simple interventions shown for John, the guy who wants to shop. Using a picture schedule, staff will remind John to check the refrigerator. Staff will review John's shopping list and discuss the items. Staff will take John to the grocery store and remind him to buy items on the list. Staff will say, "Great choice, John," when he selects items on the list. Questions say, is it okay to write the objective using the type of assistance being most often used? I think I'm reading it literally. I'm not sure what you mean, but it looks like you're saying, can you write the type of assistance being most often used in an objective? You need to be more specific than that. Tell what staff will do. If I'm a staff and I don't know what to do, today's my first day, I'm going to help John. What do I do? How do I know what the type most often used is? How do I know that? What do I do? John would like to brush his teeth twice a day within 2 verbal prompts. Okay, so my intervention, you can write the objective like that, sure, but for my interventions, I need to tell staff what I need to do to help. Okay, I will, as a staff person, um, I'm just going to go with like a morning routine. Staff will point to the picture schedule in the bathroom, point to the picture of toothbrushing. Staff will point to the toothbrush and say, pick up the toothbrush. If Kara doesn't pick up the toothbrush in 2 prompts, staff will provide hand-over-hand assistance for her to pick it up. I mean, you can break it down to as small as you want, whatever the person needs. You want to be careful not to create cue dependence for a person. It's a whole nother topic. But we need to be able to create independence by providing, I want to say, minimal supports for the different areas that the person can do partial or completion of a task. Okay. Stay tuned for upcoming training on skill building for our CFC program. And again, we'll run this training again so we could provide more details around those things if you need that. More so, talking about teaching and training to build skills is really the expertise of our Hab service providers because of your certification competences that you've proven. So in an organization, you know, the knowledge on how to support a person and how to come up with interventions, it resides within that agency. Okay. What if goals change during the plan? So we did have this question as a beginning question. A person can have different goals and objectives if they have completed something and they want to have new ones. That can be documented. The person's legal rep, if they have one, will sign it, and they'll just keep that documentation on file. Make sure that you work with the care coordinator around that. It doesn't have to have an amendment just for, and if nothing else is changing, the service is still doing the same service and things like that. You know, you don't need an amendment for that. You just need to have different goals and objectives, and then you will have that documented and signed. And so your staff will begin to document the approaches and the objectives that they're offering. And, you know, the service will still remain the same. So It's not an amended service plan. You're just amending the goals and objectives. And keep it on file. If there is an amendment, the care coordinator will include that in an amendment for changes of services, and then at a renewal plan, it can be included in a renewal plan. So just document it and keep it on file. Okay, says document the team's approval, save in the agency file, report on that change in the progress section in the next plan of care, please. Yes, thank you. Renewal planning. The planning team will review that documentation about the progress, determine if the services need to change or stay the same. Goals and accompanying objectives and interventions can be either continued or discontinued. When it's continued, we should pay attention to how the interventions are working. The idea here is that people shouldn't really have to have the same goals, objectives, and interventions into perpetuity, because that is not a depiction of what is really happening. And then you run into people having legacy goals and objectives that hang on them forever. People having basically mythology that carries throughout their life. If somebody ripped the door off the hinges 5 years ago, then that stays in the plan. Nobody thinks about it. It isn't fresh. Nobody's paying attention. The drama of the problems overtakes everybody's mind. Folks aren't paying attention to the person. And then a plan without appropriate goals and objectives is again submitted. And then the person gets what? Do they get to live a life of their choosing? Do they get help for that? Do they have help to get a life? Or is it just is it just about having a service? It becomes irrelevant, and it's not the right thing to do, because we are here because we believe in the person, no matter where they're at, even if they did rip the door off 5 years ago. That's why we're here. This is the person we work with. Today, now is the time to provide that service, and to do it in a way that works today, now, minute by minute. That's why these services are in 15-minute increments. Okay, so a list of what SDS looks for. Goals and the accompanying objectives must be person-centered, measurable, based on information provided in their profile and their assessments. It doesn't even have to be just the assessment that SDS does. Could be other sources. And not only the assessments, they have to be, the person provides information too. Adequate for the amount of services requested. I wouldn't request 18 hours of supported living for the purpose of microwaving one snack at noon. It really wouldn't be enough to tell what the service is going to do throughout the day. And I'm just using an out there example, but it needs to show what will staff do. As I've been saying, when you open the book on the incredible depth of what habilitation is, you will have no problem tapping into the words to describe what staff will do to help, to describe what steps the person needs to take. You learn their story, you learn what they want to do, and you apply the correct service to it, and then you start talking about steps, and you are actively engaged, and your staff is actively engaged. So the next statements are just going to be about, sometimes it seems that objectives don't fit the service. Teaching toothbrushing with day hab. Well, unless the person is really diligent about bringing a toothbrush with them everywhere they go, it's really something that's going to be taught at home. I did have a question about that earlier. There was an objective that the person the questioner got told that it was really an objective that a parent would work on with a child at home, rather than a service in the community. So I'm going to use a plain example, and I don't know anything about it, but I'm just going to throw it out there. The example of toilet training, requesting day habilitation for the purpose of toilet training. is really not the purpose of dehabilitation. That is a skill. Toilet training is a skill that parents teach kids at home. I'm not saying that a person can't be assisted to go to the bathroom or have care during dehabilitation, but is not requested for that purpose. The purpose of dehabilitation is different than that. It can include help like that, but it's not for that. Cautious about this type of goals, not or stopping, things that are absolute. Kara will cross the street 100% successfully with assistance by staff. Okay, what happens if the staff isn't 100% successful in assisting me? What if I'm not 100% successful? I die. That's not really going to work. It's not an accurate portrayal. It's not in the world of what we're talking about. Subjective goals, things that are a good choice, enough, something that's bad, appropriate, inappropriate, depending on who, on what. The same goal for everyone in the program. Everybody here works on something. Again, that goes back to exclusion, setting up a fake environment for people to learn something so that they can go into the real world. People we serve are not going to transfer skills like that. Believe me, folding napkins and pizza boxes in a quiet room is not the same as folding napkins and pizza boxes in the back of a pizza shop. There might be lots of things a person needs to, work on for that. Okay, our documentation piece here, I just wanted to offer you this as a resource, and this is just sort of jumping to documentation. A couple of questions. How can a care coordinator and guardian be clear in the plan that they want our staff to provide support with medication? Okay, that would throw me back to the assistance with self-administration of medication reg. If a service is going to do that, the services that do that are outlined in regulation. That would be provided as part of certain services. And hang on just a second, sorry. Okay, I will probably have to get back with you on that exactly, but there are regulations that talk about assistance with self-administration of medication and what services do it as part of the service, and you might have a specific story to share with me there. And if you email me, I'm reminding you, please do not email me any private health information in a regular email. You can use my DSM if you have case-specific stuff. I'd be happy to help. Okay. So documenting Hab services. This is the list of best practices and our provider, our requirements for provider records, which is a regulation in the 105 series. And that's what it's based on. And this is just a nutshell of that, or a summary of that, if you will. And it is as such. Base your notes on facts, credentials, time and date of note. Write it as soon as possible after the event or service occurs. If it is a late entry, it's noted as late. I really don't have any regulation that tells what's a late entry, but if a person waits more than 24 hours to write a note, it will not accurately portray what was done. Type digital or blue or black pen, pencil, a purple pen, glitter pen, they fade over time. If there are errors in handwritten notes, cross them out with one line and write corrections next to it. No whiteout, no coloring in, no blackout if it's written by hand. The note addresses a personal and/or habilitation goal, measurable goals and objectives of the service. The service note references the goal and the objectives applied. Non-habilitation service note references the outcome. I just left that in there just because you could use it for non-hab notes too. Has the person's name and an identifier, a unique identifier. documents one service at a time, one page or digital document or section, type, date, start and end time, how many hours if that was applicable. 15-minute, document each event or task. When you are offering an objective, it's each 15 minutes document what you offered and the rest of it, okay? Narrative at least once per event. Daily unit, each event or task. Narrative is provided at least once per provider shift, and that's specifically for the daily unit, usually. It justifies the duration of the service. For example, it's not a 24-hour service with a one-liner. You know, we had breakfast and we were happy today. That is not going to tell what was done to help that person. States where the service was done, describes what the provider did to help the person reach the goal. How did we teach that day? Describes their response, describes progress, unusual occurrence, states if the person declined it, indicates change in performance or need for support, does not include standby time or other time that's not the service. Okay, so some guidelines for you. Request for sample forms. I don't have a note template for you. It's really, we're in such a different world in terms of diverse notes and documentations, things like that. I mean, like formats. Sometimes we have suggested templates. You are welcome to, I gave this to you, this document to you, so you can use it. It is not intended as a template or anything. You always want to refer to regulations for your guidance. You don't want to use training stuff. Occasionally there's, like I said, some of those goals are really objectives, okay? Occasionally we have typos, we do, but we strive to not have those, so I'm happy to revise and send new to people. We revise our training all the time. Okay, so I want to go through my quick PowerPoint here about who writes the goals. It'll be just a kind of a summary version here. I also have other documents to share, one that's called service hints. And actually, that's the last one, just service hints, okay? So I'm going to call up a PowerPoint here that is about who writes the goals, and hopefully it will help us clarify some of our questions. And before the end of the session, we'll go to our original questions and see if we got close to any of them. And then we'll wrap it up, okay? So this just says, who writes the goals? The individual states their goal. Always include a personal goal. Services could support it or not. When it comes to Hab Services, they're going to have to support a goal. It's going to have to make sense for the person. It's going to have to be something that the person can achieve. Even if they take a few steps to get there or many steps to get there, it's going to have to be relevant to the person. It's going to have to be relevant to the service. Okay? If they cannot state their own goal, you can ask a POA or guardian or parent. Parents may need help to understand what this is all about. This is to help a person achieve as they define it. We can always give more information. Where's the goal? And for a plan of care, it's in a personal goal in the paper plan right now, or digital paper plan at this time. It just needs to be there. We'll have more come out about when a care coordinator begins to work in the Harmony system and things like that. But don't worry about that. We're familiar with what the plan looks like. So here are some goals. Not every goal under the sun, obviously. I want to communicate so more people can understand me. I want to take care of plants. I want to have a pet. I want to visit my family. I want to have friends. I want to have people not worry about me so much. I want to have a job, be a firefighter, bake cookies, play video games, buy things I like, have romance in my life, live on my own, write a book. If there's a goal, will a waiver service be requested to help? What steps will they take? How will staff help? And does that goal and objective set seem to match the service? As a provider, we must believe in the ability. We need to believe in people's ability to make gains and maintain. This slide here is just talking about the goals that are about stopping things. Um, I want the person to stop talking about something. I want them to stop kicking, stop inappropriate behavior. Well, what's that? Stop staying up all night, stop using diapers, stop using drugs or alcohol, stop repetitive movements, stop calling attention to yourself, and stop screaming in public. These are all kind of common goals that are like, just need the person to stop doing this and then things would be better. So I'm attempting to show how we could replace these with something functional so that the person can actually get the result they want without having to go there with this behavior. In some cases, it's kind of like a value judgment, like we may just need to pass on working on that because it's really no big deal. So the one for stopping screaming, discover what screaming means. What result do they get? Do they get it to do something or do they get away from something by doing it? An example positive statement might be increase consistent daily routine. Learn to use your voice to talk or sing or make other sounds with others, as opposed to screaming. Increasing communication skills with a person who talks about the same thing over and over. Listen to others more and respond to conversation. For kicking, stop kicking. Discover what kicking means. Talk about that, then have your objectives address what needs to happen, the positive that needs to happen. Perhaps increasing a consistent daily routine, using the feet to walk and stay at rest when seated. Staff can instruct a person when they are kicking, say, you need to use your feet to walk, instead of just saying, stop kicking. When we describe it and tell the person to stop doing something, do we know that we're actually telling them to do it in a weird way because the word that describes what you don't want them to do is the last thing you said? That's what stays in the person's mind. Instead of saying stop kicking, tell the person use your feet to walk, use your feet to stay seated, use your feet to be on the floor like this. Show them a picture. Feet go like this and show a picture. Feet stay flat. Describe what you want instead of running around saying what you don't want, because people know, people will understand that. Discover what the behavior means to the person. Offer safe ways to get the result. I think that one was for inappropriate behavior. Inappropriate could have a bazillion different, and that's a technical term, bazillion, ways of being evident. Okay, stop staying up all night. Increase sleep time during the night. That would be what you would need to be working on. Find out what health needs are impacting that behavior. For toilet training, increase self-care skills for toileting and hygiene needs. For the stop using drugs and alcohol, offer perhaps the IAT service or other treatment options when it comes to drugs and alcohol and substances, including food addiction. Recovery starts the same way as it does for anyone else, starts with the person. The person has to want to recover. And that is quite the journey for people, but it's not very different for people with an intellectual disability. We just need to break it down in simpler ways and smaller ways so people can progress. The part about this one was, I'm going back. Stop repetitive movements. You could solve that maybe, or offer an avenue from that for objectives with increasing communication skills, develop self-expression. That was for stop calling attention to yourself. That's a person who wants attention. So how do they communicate in a more functional way? For repetitive movements, it may be something that's medically based. It may be something that you really can't change for the person. So you can observe. You may need to pick your battle with that. It may not be something that's going to be what you address with an objective. Okay, so HAB services are for teaching and training in context, to learn, build, or keep skills. They are not requested solely for caregiving tasks that a person needs someone else to do for them. Okay, I've listed them here. Hab service worker can provide the help, but it is not requested for those needs. It doesn't mean that people can't, use the restroom when they're on day hab and have help. It doesn't mean that. We just don't request day hab for that. Okay, we don't request supported living to give to diaper folks who are not, continent and things like that. That's a different service that does that. For example, personal care. We request HAB services to provide teaching and training for skill building and context. We don't request it for the service itself. They have to get out into the community. It is not riding around in a car or a van, hanging out in a community place, or things that the staff want to do. It's what the person wants to do. In this example, I'm using buy things I like. And so my fictional person, I want to buy things I like. And in order to learn how to buy things I like, I want to learn how to select and pay for my own lunch. So the care coordinator talks with their person or their representative to determine that they want to buy things they like, and one thing that they really like is lunch. And then a HAB service could help with that. Objectives are the steps. The care coordinator will talk with their person and the provider about what works, and you're the provider, okay, of that HAB service. The rest of it we've kind of already gone about. Task analysis is a piece of developing objectives. In the golden rectangle there, you see that the care coordinator discusses it with the person, the rep, and the provider, which is you. The provider equips the staff to offer the objective, and the staff performs the intervention, the methodology, and you document. And then I just have a simple task analysis of like, how many steps does it take to put on your coat? Could be more or less. It's just a little list of steps that could be involved in putting on a coat, or descriptive. Any one of those a staff could assist with. How many objectives is enough? It really is based on what's in the plan. It needs to be enough objective to support the amount of services that are requested in helping that person reach their goal. Measurable, how many steps, how often, how do you tell when they've achieved it? And a couple other examples of measurability. Joe will use a combination of sign language and words to express how he feels or make a choice about activities in which he is engaged within 2 prompts 50% of the time. Methodology is staff's actions. This is what the service provider develops. You communicate it to the care coordinator. You equip the staff to offer the objective, perform the intervention, methodology, and document. And just another example of a fictitious intervention. And the rest of it. Staff models the steps to complete a game. Staff asks Joe to express how he feels. Can you tell me how you feel about that? To select and pay for my own lunch is a specific want and need that a HAB service could support. Objectives, we could give objectives for this. Anybody want to shoot out one objective that could help me learn how to select and pay for my own lunch? Just shoot one. You are the expert. What's one thing I could do to select and pay for my own lunch? Have your own charge card. Yep, that's a great example. Have a debit card. Ensure you have enough cash to afford it? Sure. It's money management stuff. Eat at a restaurant of my choice each week. All these are great. Any one of those they could be supported by a Hab service. Some of them could be supported by a residential even. The money management part. Decide what type of food you want. You could look at a menu. Thank you. Methodology or intervention? What would staff do? There you go. Review menu options and decide based on personal choice. What could staff do? What's one thing that staff could do to help me select and pay for my own lunch? What would you tell a staff person to help me do that? Just one thing. Offer healthy choices based on dietary needs. Okay. There could be more specific though. I mean, as a staff person, my idea of healthy might be one thing and okay, obtain a menu and assist with reading it. Okay, staff will read it to the person. You're at a restaurant, you go to a restaurant, you get a menu. Okay, more like if you're diabetic, okay, that would be a whole nother like health education thing about what are healthy choices, selecting things that are low carb or something. Staff can review menu options and provide support to read difficult words. Yes. They could open the menu. They could go to a place that has a picture menu or a menu with lots of pictures on it. Have you ever noticed that some of them have pictures and some of them are just words? Some places have pictures, people point to them. Some places have words and people need to read it, be able to read it. Use TripAdvisor or the local paper for new restaurants. Assist the client in narrowing down what they want to eat if they're indecisive. Okay, and what I would do for that is to just develop the way that I would do that because I want the person to make a choice of their own, but there might be questions or other kinds of cues that I could use to help that person choose. And if I don't do that, what happens a lot of times is that staff is like, well, I like hamburgers. We're just going to go here. Within 3 prompts, the person will identify healthy foods they want to eat once per week. It could be that. Could be. Okay, methodology and intervention. The care coordinator gets that or develops, they could help develop. I only put that there because sometimes our teams don't, you know, they work differently in order to make this happen. A care coordinator might have served a person for a long time and they know about what works for the person. They might help a new provider get to know that person, for example. In any case, the team must work together according to conditions of participation. And generically speaking, the care coordinator helps the person identify their goal. You work together to identify the objectives. The provider develops the methodology, the helping actions of staff. That is the general expectation. The hard expectation is that those things happen and the team works together to make that happen. Not doing that is against the conditions of participation. Okay, that was my quick presentation about who writes the goals, and it was kind of a review. And I do have just one more document to show you, which we did look at, we did put into the handout section there. I tried to create for you a quick reference, which is for training purposes only. You do need to consult regulations for your hard questions, your in-depth questions about service duplication, but you can use this as a guide and a tip sheet, if you will. Hab services defined. The services on this sheet here are the habilitation services. I put habilitative, but habilitation. Dehabilitation, most of us here will probably know what's in these first columns here. based on your regulation, your newer information here would be Hab service doesn't replace school or homeschool, daycare or parent guardian responsibility, or anything else that does the same thing as day hab. I couldn't make an exhaustive list of what the services don't replace. They can't replace things that are already in place in the person's life that does the same thing. That's what I'm trying to say. Tips, it's not for just getting the person out into the community. It's for what they're going to do when they're in the community. How are they going to learn in that setting, in that place? What do they learn? Supported living, it doesn't replace what the person can do for themselves. It does not replace what PCA or others do for the person. There was a question earlier about writing a plan or having a plan with both PCA and supported living. It needs to be very carefully written. If a person has supported living, it is for the teaching and training and context part of my home life that I'm going to have supported living for. PCA will do things for me to care for me, things that I cannot do on my own. So typically, you'll see plans that have supported living for goals that are done in a home, but not the ADLs and IADL related ones. Okay, so if a person is gonna, have friends over to their house, or if they're gonna have, they're gonna indicate choice of their favorite music that they like, if they're gonna learn more on the internet or something like that, and they're at home and they're doing this, those are not ADLs or IADLs. Those are different kinds of training and teaching in the home. It would have to be carefully kind of parceled out. What's PCA and what's the learning part. Okay. Supported living is likewise not requested specifically to provide help with ADLs and IADLs, yet if a person needed that during that time, then they would provide that. So if I don't have PCA, and I have supported living, maybe I have like a bedtime routine that I'm going to go through, and I'm learning how to be more consistent with my bedtime routine. Bathing, pajamas, things like that. In-home supports for a child, a minor under 18. It's not replaced by school or homeschool, not replaced by PCA or the other way around. It's not to replace daycare for children or anything that's a parent or guardian responsibility. I think I put under day habits not to replace daycare as well. In-home supports is for the young person to work on independent skills related to home living. Could be ADLs, IADLs, or social or communication skills at home. Not requested just solely for providing hands-on help with ADLs or IADLs. Has to be teaching and training and skill building and growing and maintaining those. Some kind of skill. Group home, I didn't really put in a lot of because we request group home for a living situation, living with peers in a group setting. The basic exclusions you're probably aware of. Family habilitation, as again, is the 24-hour service. It doesn't go into depth on every exclusion. For example, transportation and group home. I think I have it listed in the basic exclusion column. Acuity rate is only requested in situations where the person lives in the group home or residential supported living, when they have a compelling overarching need for one-on-one hands-on support for a limited time based on a health and safety risk. It's well documented, it needs to be approved, and it's not an ongoing service. IAT won't replace school or behavioral health program. Pre-employment is related to supported employment. It's separate than supported employment. It's part of it, but it's separate. It's not available during supported employment, like at the same time. Sometimes people already have supported employment, but they request pre-employment in order to learn a new skill for a different job. It's not available at the same time. The person needs to just do one or the other. And then supported employment, again, I didn't quote all of the conditions of participation, but you can look to those for further definitions of these services, but the basic definition is here, and it doesn't replace what's available through DVR. DVR, as we know, is a short-term service that people access for getting back to work or getting a job and limited time job coaching and things like that. It doesn't replace school either. A school-age person could have supported employment. For example, if they want to have a weekend job or an after-school job, or even after-school self-employment or weekend self-employment or whatever, they could have that. It just needs to show that it's not being delivered during school hours, and school, helps that person with transitional/employment skills, the person who's the right age for that, like 14 and up, still in school. But you could support the same goals, but the service is separate and it's not done during school time. Okay, so I'm trying to give a quick reference, if you will, of the Hab services, just a special of the Hab services. Let me take a look at our questions from the top there and make sure that I have them in my mind. I think we may have answered many of them through the presentation here. Write your thoughts and questions as I'm looking. I'm kind of scrolling and things like that. Okay, so your questions about proper documentation, I think we may have answered many of those. The right way, a preferred way to write goals and objectives, how to ensure they're measurable. Questions about numbers of objectives, goals for the different services being appropriate to the service, what a reviewer is looking for. How is someone supposed to come up with goals and objectives for an individual they never met? Really, it's just you start with the person and they can identify that. If you haven't met them, make an appointment to meet them. As a provider, we should probably, meet the person and hopefully have been pretty descriptive of, how much we put into this. Are reviewers trained in goal writing? Yes, reviewers are trained. Reviewers and I work together really well. They help me understand a lot of things for this presentation. So our reviewers here, we're a team. We're standing together on behalf of great goals, objectives, and interventions for the people we serve. Can respite be provided when the primary unpaid care provider is working at their job? Respite is, although it's interesting, this was a Hab service presentation. Hab services are provided, respite's not a Hab service is what I'm trying to say. So I didn't talk about it, but respite is not for the purpose of providing a service while the main caregiver works. It's an interesting service because it's the only one that's there for somebody else. It's not for the individual. Of course it's for the individual. It keeps the person safe and provides the same care that the unpaid caregiver would do, but it is not, the benefit of it is so the individual caregiver gets a break. So when they're working, it's not getting a break. So my answer is no. It's not requested or delivered to allow a caregiver to work. And I think that was really the only one I can pick out here that we really didn't talk about because it wasn't a HAB service that the question was about. Other questions are, do they have to go through DVR for supported employment, for self-employment if they already know where they want to work? A person must have, they must go through DVR prior to accessing supported employment, and the person has the choice to either, and I'm going to say it in a weird way, like a plain way, they have a choice to open a case with DVR, in other words, to get services from DVR or not. As I understand it, DVR has a memorandum of agreement with Senior and Disability Services and is well versed and trained in how to assist a person who comes to their office, and it's a person who experiences intellectual developmental disability, has the waiver. That caseworker, if you will, is going to, their DVR caseworker is going to be able to help them identify what DVR can do for them, and being as that it is a short-term service, what it cannot do for them. Okay, so in some cases, DVR provides the person with a letter that says that their long-term services and they're not going to be able to meet their needs because they provide short-term services. And in some cases, people use the short-term services and then move to the waiver for the long-term ones. But it is true that DVR is where a person needs to start when it comes to supported employment. And if a person already has supported employment and they have had it for a long, long time and they don't have any records of having gone to DVR, my best answer is like, you don't have to turn back time and go there now. But that doesn't mean that the person shouldn't have a chance to try DVR if they wanted. Again, it's not going to be able to replace, it can't duplicate. Okay, so you need to think about that, and the care coordinator will help you think that through too. Okay, so I'm pretty much done my presentations. I don't really have any other documents to show you. I would like to open up for questions if you want to stay. If you want to close the session, that's okay too. Maybe by show of hands, how many people are good to go at this time? Do you feel like you got most of your questions answered? Most of us? Okay. Okay. It shows like probably about 3/4 of us. Based on that, I will go ahead and close our session. I will leave the webinar open for the next couple minutes in case you want to throw me some last minute notes here, questions and things like that. Other than that, you're good to go.